Hi everyone. So we're just going to give it a few more minutes to let some more people join. If you could let us know in the chat where you've come from, that would be great. I'll just give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. Okay, I'll get going. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for the final webinar in this series. My name is Rachel and I'm a Wildlife Officer at Cheshire Wildlife Trust. My colleague Kelly is working behind the scenes tonight on all things tech. And we've got Kat, our Senior Digital Marketing Officer, and Rachel, our Digital and Media Relationships Officer, who are taking you through an introduction to digital communication tips. So just a bit of housekeeping to start off with. This webinar will be recorded. So if your camera isn't already off and you would like to turn it off, then please do so now. If you get disconnected for any reason, do rejoin and Kelly will let you back in. We'll have a Q&A session at the end where you can put any questions in the chat, but also feel free to pop these questions in the chat as we go along, and then we'll just come to them at the end. We will be sending a follow-up email after the webinar with all of the useful links we mention, as well as the recording of the webinar itself. We always welcome feedback on these webinars and ideas for future webinars, so I'll be asking you at the end of this session for ideas on future training courses as well. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Kat and Rachel to take you through the session.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. So, hi, I'm Kat. I'm the Senior Digital Marketing Officer at Cheshire Wildlife Trust. I've been, just a bit about me, I've been at the Trust for 5 years now. Before that, I've had a background in communications. I studied media and journalism at university and then spent 11 years working in local radio. And as part of that, worked with a lot of volunteers and community groups to create content for radio. At the Trust, I lead on what we call individual giving. So that's people joining as members, donating to our appeals, our online shop, community fundraising, things like that. So I do all of the digital delivery of those things. And also I write our weekly newsletter. So if you get the weekly newsletter on a Wednesday evening, you'll be getting it in 1 hour's time. It's written by me each week. I'll hand over to Rachel.
Hi everyone, so I'm Rachel. I'm the Digital Media Officer at Cheshire Wildlife Trust. I've also been at the Trust for over 5 years now. It seems like yesterday, so 5 years has flown by. I work on press releases, I manage the website, I manage our social media channels, I sort of manage the photography and video side of things, so it's quite a varied role and it's really enjoyable. So my background is actually in media communications and content creation. I've worked in social media and digital comms now for over 12 years and outside of work it's something I do as well, and I've got 160,000 followers on Instagram, so I'm very much in the content creator world. One of my highlights of working at Cheshire Wildlife Trust is photographing the very first pair of beavers to be released in Cheshire for over 400 years. So I've just popped in a photograph there of, I think it was the male beaver actually chewing on some willow a few years ago, 4 years ago now. So yeah, time has flown.
So today we're going to be talking about communication and why it's important. So communication comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes, but to put it really simply, it's a way of telling people what you're up to, getting people interested, getting people engaged, sharing your successes and drumming up support. for what you're doing. What we found personally from working with Cheshire Wildlife Trust is that sharing stories, and particularly sharing stories about people, is really impactful, and it can really inspire people to do things in their own communities. So sharing what you're doing can have a ripple effect way beyond your village, your town, your own community. You can do this in a variety of different ways, which is what we're going to be talking about today. We're mainly going to cover digital communication, but we've also got some great resources for things that you can create, resources that you can use to create things like posters and flyers and physical resources as well. Everything we're going to be covering today, all of the platforms that we use and we're going to be talking about, are free to access. If you do have funding available or there's budget there are paid for add-ons to those things, but they're all free to sign up for and to use. So where to find people with your communications? There are lots of different places you can put either physical or digital communications, and it completely depends on who you're trying to reach. The best thing to do is to reach audiences where they are. So think about who you want to reach. If you do a particular project or do quite a lot of work in a particular park, you could see if there's notice boards nearby, speak to the cafes that surround that park. You want to be capturing people that use that on a regular basis. If you know that a lot of your audience or people you want to reach are online, you can look at social media, local groups that already exist, tap into those. You could be putting leaflets through doors, village notice boards. You could send information out to local newspapers and magazines, and quite often there's sort of community bulletins and things that you can get involved with. I know from my experience working in local radio stations really love sort of hyper-local people stories. At the radio station where I work, every day we have someone new coming in and just talking about what they were doing, and we always got a great response to that. And also word of mouth can be really powerful. When people join Cheshire Wildlife Trust or donate to our appeals, we ask them where they heard about us, and the two top things are always social media and somebody told me about you. So it's a friend or a family member. So talk to as many people as possible about what you're doing, and that spread. Again, social media can be really powerful. Rachel's going to talk to you a bit more about social media later on, but what we find is it's not necessarily just the news and information we put out in press releases that gets covered. Things that we put on our social media channels gets picked up by local blogs, local news outlets, because they tend to follow us and follow what people are doing. So yeah, spread your message far and wide if you're able to. So once you've found your audience, you want to capture their imagination, grab their attention, and let them know what you're doing. I would say the key thing to think about here is how people are responding, not necessarily how many. So it's better to reach a group of 50 people who are really interested in what you're doing and want to get involved and want to engage, than reaching 5,000 people that are scrolling past it or not very interested. The best way to do this is to think about what you're trying to achieve and who you need to reach to do that. This is something me and Rachel do a lot with our work. It's what's the end goal? Who do we need to reach that goal? And then think about where you find those people and sort of do it backwards. And again, there's real power in people stories and people storytelling. And just remember that what you think is just another day doing what you're doing in your local area might be really interesting and really inspiring to someone else. We often find our conservation teams, so the teams that work out on nature reserves, me and Rachel are always trying to get stories from them. So what's been happening here today? What's been happening with the beavers? And they don't particularly think it's that interesting because it's their day job. They think, oh, people don't want to know what I was doing at the nature reserve today. And we were like, trust us, they do. So your everyday tasks, your run of the mill, could be really inspiring to someone else. And tell us what you're doing as well. We love sharing your stories. So Rachel, other Rachel, who introduced you at the beginning of the webinar, she often writes blogs about things that people are doing in communities. And whenever we share those, they do really well. And we get some really nice feedback on them. So yeah, share your stories with us as well. Getting people to listen and telling those stories effectively, we use something called the 5 C's of storytelling, which is basically who, what, why, when, where. So who's involved in what you're doing, what problem is it that you're trying to solve? What's the motivation behind it? I think that's really powerful to talk about why you're doing something, where is it happening, and what's the ending. I think it's really important to demonstrate your impact, and don't be modest about it. If you've worked really hard, it's made a difference. Show it off, because that's what people can be really inspired by. And a really good way of doing that, we do a lot, is before and after pictures. If you've taken a rundown area in your community and turned it into somewhere wonderful for wildlife and for people, document it, show it off, and demonstrate your hard work. So now oh no, sorry, I was going to pass on to Rachel, but I'm ahead of myself. Thinking particularly about events, if you've got events that you might want to talk about, planning is the key, and trying to talk about those events in as much notice as possible. The quickest and easiest way to do that is on social media, but as I said, thinking about where your audience is and who your audience might be, it might be worth putting up posters in notice boards in your community, in libraries, cafes, in local parks. So think about who your audience is for that event and keep up the momentum. Tell people about the event in as much notice as possible, and then keep sharing reminders. So might be, this is happening in a month's time, only 2 weeks to go, who's coming, this is happening tomorrow. And also, the event isn't the end of the story. You can share the success afterwards. So say, for instance, if you've done a tree planting day, take lots of pictures, speak to people about how much fun they had there. And then if you have another one, you can use all of that content and say, look what happened last time, it was great, everyone had a really good time, you don't want to miss the next one. So you can always use the content you're gathering. So don't think of the event that you're doing as the end point. So over the next few slides, we're going to take a look at some of the different platforms you can use to do all of this. These are all things that we use at Cheshire Wildlife Trust. They're all things that me and Rachel use on a daily basis. They all offer paid for services, but they are all free to sign up to. So these are all things you can register to use. They're very, very user friendly. We're going to share some links. I'm going to send you an email after the webinar with all of the links and guides to how to use these and how to get set up. Don't worry if they seem complicated and technical. They are simple to use. Also, if you feel like, if you're part of a community group and you feel like there are skills missing, it's always worth advertising for local volunteers. You'll find that a lot of young people who want a career in communications are always keen to get valuable experience. I was in that position years ago. There might be people doing Duke of Edinburgh Award that are looking for voluntary opportunities. So if you want someone who might be more social media savvy or good at photography or maybe doing some videoing, it's always worth a call out and seeing if there's people there. And also the Champions Facebook group, if you're not already part of it, that's a really good network of people sharing tips, sharing advice and sharing successes. So that's a really good place to start as well, if you're not already there. So now I'm going to hand over to Rachel, who's going to talk a bit more about messaging and photography and social media.
Yes, so thank you, Kat. Yes, so I'm just going to touch on messaging and photography, and then I'm going to go into sort of the social media side of things. So as Kat's mentioned, that, you know, communicating messages with our audience is really important, and how we do that is also really important. So when it comes to communicating messages, especially in the conservation world, whether that's online, in person, in newspapers, articles, radio, blogs, TV, you name it, it's really important to use language that everyone can understand. So studies have shown that when you're communicating, you have to communicate like you're talking to a 12-year-old. That's the age, apparently, is a 12-year-old. Let me just turn my volume off. There we go. Yeah, so speak and write like you would be describing your project or explaining what you're doing to a 12-year-old. So we have to assume that nobody knows what we're talking about, especially in the conservation world, because there are lots of jargon around. I know sometimes, you know, the nature recovery team, they'll send me things for social media and I'm just, I can't understand it. I have to sort of go back to them and go, what does this mean? Even now, even after 5 years, you know, I'm getting better, but yeah, even after 5 years, I'm still like, wow, what does this even mean? But they don't really see it like that, because they're so much in their own world and it's what they know. Trying to explain it to me, it's like, oh right, okay, I didn't realize that you don't understand it, because they're not in that mindset. So yeah, it's just something to be mindful. If you're explaining anything that you're doing, if you get stopped, if you're at an event or doing a community project or anything, and anyone asks you what you're up to, it's always just being mindful, and with social media posts also, to just make sure that you're just really explaining it really. Yeah, so basically, when I create a social media post or I'm writing a press release, I always think, yeah, how would I explain this project to my 12-year-old sister, Harriet? She is actually 12, so yeah, I always think, how would I explain it to her? Using photography in communication is really important as well, because it helps connect people with your project, and it visualises the site. It's good to showcase transformations, like Kat said earlier. So an example here on the left, there's a few pictures of wildflower meadows that Hannah Dalton, our living landscape officer, worked with some landowners on for a few years. So what she's done here is she's taken photographs of the before, and then a couple of years later she's taken the photographs of what they look like now, and that's an amazing story. So we've used that as part of our pollinating Cheshire, our meadows appeal, you know, in blogs, in press releases, social media, everything, because it really visualizes the site so people can actually see what it looked like before and how amazing it looks now. So it's, even I have to do it sometimes when I'm out and about and I go out with the nature recovery team, is make sure I get a before photograph, because it will really help in the comms further down the line. And as well as including nature in photography, include people, like the photographs on the right there, because people connect with people. And if you're going to do that, just make sure that you get consent from people first. We have, I believe, a nature photography session coming up. And I think details on how to book for that session, you know, if you want support in how to take a photograph and all that sort of stuff, details will be sent over in the follow-up email. And some fantastic resources for photography, which is what we use at the Trust. It's what I use personally, and what Kat touched on earlier is you don't worry about collecting a bank of photographs. If you've got photographs of a meadow from a site, you know, a few months ago, that's okay to use again, you know, recycle that content. But if you can't, you haven't got enough photographs, there are these free resources here called Pixabay, Pexels, CapCut and Unsplash. Now they are stock and video free sites. You can go on there, you can search whatever you want. So if you typed in a wildflower meadow, it'll probably bring up loads of photographs and loads of videos of wildflower meadows. CapCut is a video editing software. So all these are apps that you can download on your phone. So it's really easy as well that, you know, if you're out and about with your phone and you take a quick photograph, you can just upload it straight to CapCut and you can create like a little video and then upload that to social media. Quick and easy. Pexels, Pixabay and Unsplash is the same. So you can download them as an app. You can go on there and search for a photograph that you're after, save it to your phone and then add it as a social media post. So it's all really simple. Envato and Lightroom, they are paid for services, but they offer a bit more. So obviously Envato, there's thousands and thousands of resources on there, thousands of videos, thousands of photos. There's templates for PowerPoints, there's templates for all sorts. So it just offers a bit more. And Lightroom is obviously an app you can have on your phone as well, where if you have took a photo and it's a bit dull and you just want to brighten it up a little bit and add a bit of pizzazz to it, you can just edit the photograph in there. So they're just some resources that I find useful, and Kat finds useful when we're communicating our comms. So now a poll should appear. I'm going to touch on social media. So I'm just interested to know, are you using social media currently for your group or your project? If you could just answer that. And then there's another one. I'm just going to say, yeah, I'm going to yes. And if you are, then what platforms are you currently using? And that just so I've got an idea.
So there's a little arrow at the bottom to go on to the next question as well, if you haven't.
So I'll just give that a few more minutes. I think we've only got 2 responses so far. Okay. I'll just give it a few more seconds. Got 3 responses. Okay, let's leave it there. Okay, cool. So For this section, yes, I'm going to touch on social media and a quick overview of some platforms. So as you can see from the graphic on the left, there are lots of social media platforms to be on these days. It's a very saturated place to be, and the graphic only shows a small portion of them. There are, like the cat says, that's a lot. So, however, the good news is you don't have to actually be on all of them to reach your audience, because everyone is at least on 2 of them. So, you know, I mean, a lot of people, if you've got Facebook, you might have Instagram, or you might have a YouTube account, or you know, Pinterest or TikTok. So at least you will reach your audience you're trying to target on at least 2 of those platforms. So what I'm going to focus today on is Facebook and Instagram and some of the tools they provide to help us build communities. So what Facebook can offer, and what we know to be successful at Cheshire Wildlife Trust, is building small communities online who have the same interests and passions, and we use Facebook groups to help us do that. So there are 2 options to choose from. You can either build a Facebook page like we have on the left, that Cheshire Wildlife Trust has on the left, or you can create a group. So the best way to explain the difference between a page and a group is that a page is more of a shop window for a brand. So it's a great way to showcase products and services to grab people's attention without much input from the public. A group, however, is more like, I would say, is like a notice board within the shop, where people can go in the shop, they can pin their updates and the photos, they can add comments, they can share anything of interest, and then people can also engage with that as well and find out like bits of information and stuff. So as Cheshire Wildlife Trust, a brand, we have a page because this allows us to be the main projection of any communication, and people can only comment and engage on the posts that we publish. Our project teams work on the ground with communities, so and businesses as well, such as our Rewilding Stockport team, Wilder Schools, Wilder Champions. They all have groups to build an online and offline community where local people can communicate, network and discuss ideas to take action for wildlife. So if you're an established group and you're wanting to showcase your work you're doing with no real input from the public, you just want to showcase, you want to just shout about what you're doing, you're not really interested in trying to grow it, you just want to show people just what you're doing, you're amazing, you're great, you're cracking on, this is what we do, a page would be better. But if you want to grow the group, build a small community of people who are inspired, you want them to take action for wildlife, you want them to help you plant some trees, help you run an event, plant a wildflower meadow, work with the local council, all that kinds of things, all with people with the same interests, and attract them in, a group would be better to do that. So I'm just going to talk to you now on how a group can actually help. So I hope people, I know it's a lot of information, so I hope you're all caught up so far. But unlike a Facebook page, a group can actually be private or public, but you can choose if you want to close it off to a certain amount of people or you want to open it up to the public. So with private groups, you can keep a tight-knit community of people. So you don't need to have loads of random people joining the group who aren't from the area, or those who particularly may want to spam and shout about businesses and all that kind of thing. You know, you know that yourself if you're in any community groups on Facebook. People just like to spam it with things. So it can be really tailored to the people that you just want to speak to and target. On the spam note, groups can be created with a rule behind them. So as you can see on the left, I hope you can all read it, but on the left, rules are set. So people who want to join have to accept those rules that you set up. So this protects you then from unwanted spammers. It also protects you that if people break those rules that you've set, they can be removed and banned from the group. So if someone does sneak in and they start going against the rules, it can be removed based on the rules and the terms that you've set up. So you are protected in that way. There are also options to approve posts, which will allow you and your moderation team to screen incoming posts. This is a great way to manage the content that gets shared on there. On a more positive note, people can post in the group with photos and stories of what they've created and what they've spotted in the gardens. So there's an example on the right there where a lady had spotted a moth caterpillar. She was able to share that in the group and people were able to engage and respond with it. So it's more of an interaction and inspiration area a group is. You can also create polls on groups to give the opportunity to gather feedback in your community. And there's also, just to touch on, a community chat option within a group. So what that does is that blends the Facebook group and Facebook Messenger together. So you can create like a little Facebook Messenger group where everyone can talk and chat more intimately rather than just in the group. So that's Facebook. And now just over to Instagram, just a very quick overview if I can. Instagram is a powerful tool for building and nurturing communities. So it was taken over, just a quick overview, it was taken over by Facebook, in 2012, and it's since grown to over 2 billion monthly users on the platform. So that's lots of people who've had Facebook accounts and that have migrated over to Instagram since they decided to collate themselves together and call themselves Meta. You may have heard Meta, and that's because Facebook have branded themselves and they've got Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram underneath them. So there are just a few ways that you can build a community on the platform. Even though it doesn't have groups like Facebook does, it's very good at storytelling. It's a very, very, very good storytelling platform. With tools like Reels, carousels and stories. You can also find your community of people with similar interests through hashtags. They also have an explore page, so the more content you interact with, the explore page will show you that content you've interacted with. So if you're interacting with people who are interested in wildlife and nature, tree planting, wildflower meadows and what have you, it will show you more of that. So you can find your community and find the people who are interested through there. And they also have a search engine, so you can just type things in. Literally, the way the platforms move now is more of a search engine. So you can search for people, for groups, for anything on there, and it will find them. So that's a new thing that's coming in. So that's quite a good tool really for people who want to grow a community on Instagram. It's also a really good way of supporting and encouraging others through liking, through commenting, sharing posts, doing things on stories and what have you. It is very much built around, I know the founder is very much pushing the platform to be a very community heavy platform. So it is one to have, I would suggest, if you're wanting to build an online community. So just some social media top tips to finish on. If you are posting on Instagram, then it's worth keeping in mind that it was made as a vertical platform. So it was designed for mobiles. So portrait videos and photographs are best. This is also the same if you're posting on TikTok or Snapchat. If you're wanting to post on Facebook, X, LinkedIn or YouTube, then landscape photos and videos work better. Instagram and Facebook stories are a great way to engage, as I mentioned, and they stay visible for 24 hours. So they're fantastic for showing behind the scenes. So if you are out in a community event, or you are, again, as I've mentioned, planting trees or wildflower meadows or anything like that, it's great to just do a quick selfie video and go, we're here today, come and see us at such and such. So it's just a really good behind the scenes tool, and they only stay on for a day. Yeah, and if you're wanting to share your storytell through videos, recent research suggests that people start to lose concentration on social media after 8 seconds. So in a world where everyone is watching content, people's attention spans have decreased significantly. So short form content, which is anything from 50 seconds to a minute, is vital really if you want to capture people's attention. Long form content, which is anything over 2 minutes, can be broken down into small form content. So let's say, for example, you were creating a YouTube video that's 3 minutes long. That's great to recycle that into small bite-sized chunks. So grab snippets of that video and make it into little small highlight stuff for social media, and then you can link to the YouTube video. But to capture people's attention, short form, little short snappy videos to trending music tends to grab people's attention more. And yeah, and most of all, have fun with it. Social media is changing all the time, trends are changing all the time, but what we do know is that people's attention spans are decreasing. So it's really important to just make your content and video very snappy and have hooks at the beginning, so people are hooked into your content. And then just briefly, I'm not going to go into it too much, but if some of you may have heard about the new platform called Threads that Facebook have launched to compete with X/Twitter, that's still very new and still sort of a work in progress. But if anyone wants to know any more information about that, then do ask me at the end in the questions. And that is me. Kat, you're on mute.
So I'm going to talk about
I think you're
platforms.
still on mute.
No, I'm not on mute anymore. Can everyone hear me? Can I have a thumbs up from someone?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Cool. Thank you. So I'm going to talk about a few platforms that I use regularly, one of which is MailChimp, which, if you haven't heard of it before, it's a really good platform that we use to send newsletters. So if you get the Cheshire Wildlife Trust weekly newsletter, if you get any of our newsletters about volunteering or the Champions Network, these are all sent through MailChimp. It's completely free to set up an account if you're speaking to up to 500 people. So we have about 40,000 contacts that we're speaking to on a regular basis. So we have a paid for account, but you can do a lot of stuff with the free account. There are loads of great templates you can use, which are really easy to edit. So there's a bit of an example there, a few of the different templates that you can add your own images and text to. Or the example on the left there is they have sort of building blocks where you can build something completely from scratch. It depends how creative you want to be. And also it's built to create emails that work on a phone as well, because we can see through MailChimp that a lot of people are reading our emails on their mobile phones or on their tablets and iPads. So you get to see what that email looks like on a phone before you send it. People have to consent to hear from you if people are giving you their email addresses. What MailChimp does, which is really great, is it manages its own unsubscribe capabilities. So if people don't want to hear from you anymore, there'll be a little link at the bottom of the email that you've sent, and then they'll stop hearing from you. So you don't have to worry about sending things to people when they don't want to hear from you. MailChimp is something that I spend every day on. I do a lot of work on MailChimp. So over the years, I've learned quite a few things just through trial and error, and these would be my top tips. The main one is keep it simple. Emails don't have to be all singing and all dancing. They just want to be straight to the point, telling people what you need to tell them. I'm sure we all know the feeling of just getting flooded by emails on a daily basis. A lot of them are junk. A lot of them are useless and you don't want to look at them. So you want to try and capture people's attention. So the best way of doing that is thinking about the subject line and the from line. So within MailChimp, you can curate, you can dictate who it says it's coming from. So the example there where it says Cheshire Wildlife Trust, that's how I format it when I'm sending the newsletter. So people know exactly who it's coming from. I've put a subject line there so people know what the subject of the email is. So it's coming from someone familiar. But the example on the top is a bit more personal. So if you're part of a community group or a community where you've been sending people emails previously on a regular basis, you can make it through MailChimp that it comes from your name. So it's not familiar. All of a sudden, if people are getting an email from you through MailChimp, it won't look any different from their perspective. It makes your life easier because you're able to speak to lots of people at once. But from their perspective, it's still something familiar in their inbox. They don't have to worry that it's spam or it's something that they shouldn't be opening. Lots of nice pictures is always useful. It's always nice to have nice content in your inbox because a lot of emails you get are just plain text. You can upload all your own pictures, either ones that you've taken or ones that you've used with platforms that Rachel suggested. Buttons are a really effective thing to use these emails. There's examples there I use quite regularly in our emails. If you want someone to do something, like take them to a website to find out about an event or send them to a blog post, it's a good way of capturing attention and getting skim readers, because quite often people will sort of scroll through an email, but if there's something there that says, do click here and this will happen, that's quite effective. I would say always send yourself a test email. I've learned that the hard way, that sometimes you create an email and you think it's fantastic, and then you realize once it's gone out that there's a glaring spelling mistake or something doesn't look quite right. So within MailChimp, you can send yourself a test. You can see what it looks like on your phone, double check it before it goes to everybody. Another thing that MailChimp does, which I find incredibly useful, is something called reports. So once MailChimp has sent an email, it then starts looking at who's clicking on links. So I use this a lot with our weekly newsletter because I want to be sending information out that people find interesting and that people are enjoying. So once I've sent an email, a few days later, I can say, okay, what did people enjoy about that? What did people click on? And then you can learn from that. So next time you send an email, you think, well, I won't send people stuff that they weren't interested in. And yeah, MailChimp does all the hard work for you in that regard with the reports. The MailChimp website has some really, really good, simple how-to guides. Every element of creating an email has a very simple video guide and text guide. We're going to share links to that in the email that we'll send you after this. But yeah, it's really, really good to use those guides and just spend a bit of time getting used to it. So another platform that I, again, use on a daily basis is something called Canva. So if you haven't heard about Canva, it's a brilliant free platform that lets you design physical and digital resources. So you can make posters, flyers, social media posts, tickets for things. You can pretty much make anything. So when you go onto the website, you get the box that's in the top left-hand corner there. It basically asks you, what do you want to make? And you can type in anything. As an example here, I typed in, I want to create a flyer for Volunteer Day. In the left-hand, bottom left there, there's just a few examples that popped up. And you can do whatever you like with those templates. You can change the colours, you can add your own pictures, add things to it. And yeah, there's hundreds and hundreds of templates to choose from, or you can create your own. On the right-hand side, there's a few things I've created there through Canva. So the one with the robin was a flyer we made for our Christmas shop. So our online shop gave this flyer out at some of our events towards Christmas. And the ones in the middle there are some social media tiles that I created. Some of that is using pictures that I uploaded, and other bits are things that already existed in Canva. You can add your own logos, your own colour schemes, your own images if you like, but there's plenty there that you can use if you don't have those sorts of resources. So my top tips from using Canva on a regular basis, again, is keep it simple. I would just spend a bit of time, go on there, have a little search, see what it can create, see what it might be useful for you. With whatever you create, and I think this is applicable to physical and digital resources, is don't use too much text. Try and keep it eye-catching and simple, but signpost people elsewhere for all the information. Something that's really good for this is QR codes. I think we all got used to using them during COVID. We all got a bit sick of using them during COVID, but they are actually really effective. An example here on the right is a poster that I created for something called the Big Wild Walk, which is a fundraising walk that we do every year. There's a bit of information on the poster, but then there's a QR code there to direct people to find out everything else they need to know, how to book, how to join. But one thing I would say is always have the web address as well as the QR code, because some people might not have a smartphone, they might not be able to use a QR code, they might not feel comfortable using QR code, they might not know how. So you just want to make sure that everybody, it's as accessible as possible. Again, with Canva, you can add your own images to create things. One thing that they do that's great is the templates and size prompts. So if you want to make an A4 poster or an A5 flyer or an Instagram story, which is the 3 sort of long pictures there, it gives you the exact size you need. So you're confident that what you're creating is going to be fit for purpose. And you can have a blank canvas with that, or you can use one of the templates. Another thing that's quite good once you've got past that point is something called elements. So you can add in sort of special effects and little graphics and things that exist. And one of the examples here is the 3 pictures that are sort of a funny shape. Is something called frames, where they have tons and tons of different shapes that you put into your project that you're doing, put into your poster, and then you pull a photo across, and it makes it that shape. So it can make things just look a bit more interesting. And one I use quite a lot is the bird there with the little sort of pinpoint one. That's quite nice to use. So again, just go on there, read the guides. Similarly to MailChimp, there's a lot of how-to guides with pretty much every step of the way with Canva. So we'll share those. There's good how-to guides. Yeah, it's an absolutely fantastic resource. A lot of us at the Trust use this on a daily basis. So the final thing I'm going to mention tonight is taking advantage of a local or national conversation that's already happening to highlight what you're doing. So a really good way of doing this is through something that we do, which is 30 Days Wild. So I'm just going to play this little short video and then I'll talk to you a bit more about it. So that's just a bit of a snippet. If you've not heard of it before, 30 Days Wild is something that all of the wildlife trusts across the country do, where we encourage people to do something to do with nature every day in June. And as you can see there from the end of that video, people share what they're doing online. You might find that people in your local community are doing it and trying to find something to get involved with while they're doing it. And you could share what your group are doing throughout June. It's really nice. A lot of us as staff take part in it every year. It's a really nice way to spend your summer. It's completely free to take part. At the moment, there aren't packs tailored to community groups, but when you sign up, you can get a postal or a digital pack for individuals, care homes, businesses, or schools. The care homes, businesses, and schools ones are tailored to people doing things as a collective and doing things as a group. So I would probably suggest if you wanted to do something as a community group or as a collective, that they might be one of the packs that you want to order. But they're really nice. It's a really nice thing to get involved with. As I say, it's completely free. We do have digital flyers and posters that you can print off. So if you are interested, if you think people in your community would be interested in taking part, we can send that round with the email that we send you afterwards. And there's also another great online community through 30 Days Wild, called 30 Days Wild from the Wildlife Trust. And it's people all across the country. They post all year round, sharing stories about what they're doing, sharing projects, sharing successes, tips and advice. So I would say between that and the Champions Facebook group, they're really good places to start. So that's everything we're going to cover. So I can move on to questions if anyone's got any questions from what we've talked about.
Thanks, Kat and Rachel. That was great. So many useful tips and tricks. I'm sure we can all take something from that to apply with our own communities. So there's some time for questions now. So if you want to pop any questions in the chat, but also if you just want to raise your hand and you can ask it yourself.
Well, we will be circulating. We're going to send round all of the how-to guides that we mentioned and things, and advice on how to set up all these things.
Okay, so I do have a couple more things before we go. If we don't have any questions, you can pop them in chat anyway, because I've got a couple more things to go through. So first up is another poll. So basically, we'd love to know your feedback for future training courses. So I'm going to launch a little word cloud now that should have popped up on your screen. So basically, If you have any ideas for training courses that you'd be interested in that might help you or your groups, then please do pop them in the box. So a couple more things before we go. If you haven't already, we would love for you to join our Wilder Champions network. So we define a Wilder Champion as anyone who's helping wildlife in their community, workplace or school whilst inspiring others to do the same. By signing up to the Wilder Champion Network, you'll receive access to free training courses and workshops, digital toolkits and online resources, networking opportunities, as well as mentoring and professional support from members of Cheshire Wildlife Trust. So I will be sending out a link in the follow-up email for anyone who would like to sign up. So please share with anyone who might be interested in your groups or even within your local communities. We're currently planning some really exciting events over the summer, such as bat walks, wildflower meadow creation training, fungi ID walks, and photography workshops that Rachel mentioned earlier. So please make sure you're signed up as a Wilder Champion and you'll be the first to know about these upcoming events. Coming up next weekend, we do have a guided nature walk with naturalist Fungal Punk Dave. He's amazing. I would recommend the walk. It's going to be really good. So it's a morning walk around Whitby Park in Ellesmere Port, learning how to identify insects and other wildlife that we find. There are some places remaining, so use the QR code or URL to book on. But again, I will put this in the follow-up email. Is there any questions popped up in the chat? No? Okay, so, oh, Emma, do you want to unmute yourself and ask a question?
Hi, yeah, sorry, I am unable to put anything in the chat or in the Q&A, so I just wanted to say I don't have a question, but some people might have the same situation as me. I don't know why I'm using Teams on the web rather than through an app, but I can't even click into the chat, and I couldn't take part in the polls either, so I don't know if other people have had that problem.
Okay, that's good to know. Thanks for flagging. We'll try sort that for the next one.
Okay.
Thank you for letting us know.
Yeah, that's been the same for me.
Oh, thank you very much, because I can't put it in the chat. It was really useful. Thank you.
Thanks. Glad you enjoyed it.
And we've got someone typing in the chat. Yes, Kevin says, thanks for that. I'm thinking about using MailChimp. So Kat's tips were really useful. That's great. And if you have anything as you kind of start to investigate MailChimp, Kevin, I'm sure that the how-to guides that we send out after this webinar will also be useful.
I've used them loads, and actually one thing I forgot to say with MailChimp is they have a really good support facility. So they have a live chat where you actually get through to a real person. It's not a bot that you're speaking to. And yeah, they have really good how-to guides and support. So I sometimes get in touch with them if there's something that I'm struggling with, and they always come back to me really quickly.
Great, thanks.
We have got someone else just typing.
Okay.
Oh, no, maybe they changed their mind. Oh, can I share this stuff with group members who are not Wildlife Trust members? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And the same goes for the events that Rachel's just mentioned. Absolutely. They're open to anyone who's interested, anyone who wants to learn more. Our Wilder Champion network that Rachel talked about is all about supporting. Nobody needs to be a member. It's all about supporting everyone who wants to make a difference and everyone who wants to do something in their community, at their school, in their home. And most of what we do is free. Most of the guides are free. Most of the training is free. So yeah, absolutely. Share away.
Great. I think that's everything for this evening. Thanks again, Kat and Rachel, for giving a great presentation. And yeah, keep your eyes peeled for the follow-up email, which will be going out hopefully tomorrow with all the links, and also the recording of the webinar as well. So thank you, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your evening.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming.